Robert Englund here, aka Freddy Krueger. And I'm really looking forward to my Zoom for Shawicon on February 27th. So have your questions ready. We'll have a great Q&A. See you then.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's an honor for us to have one of the biggest horror icon of all time with us here in the Shawinigan at the Shawicon, Mr. Robert Englund. Welcome to Shawicon. Thank you. Thank you for being here.
Bonsoir.
Bonsoir. Oh, so glad to be with you tonight. With all this COVID thing, how do you do with this with the COVID and all the stuff that happens to us?
Well, we were talking earlier, and I was telling you, I have been doing a lot of Zoom, and I have a good microphone, so I'm able to do some voiceover work here from my office. So between the voiceover work and the Zoom interviews, I'm sort of keeping myself out there. But I've had the depression of not being able to be in contact with my fans. I've had to, cancel international trips and trips here in the States domestically, as well as I'm waiting to go to Atlanta, Georgia, in the States, and fulfill my obligation to the great television, great Netflix series, Stranger Things.
Yes, we will talk about it later. But will you have to be have the vaccine for to continue to working?
I've had my first vaccination.
Okay.
I got the Moderna, and I get my second one tomorrow. So tomorrow I will have my booster, my first 2 shots.
Yep.
I think that it takes about 3 weeks, and then I'm in pretty good shape.
Yes. Fortunately, you will be able to work and travel and have a normal life,
Normal, I don't know. We still have to do, because everybody else has to catch up. I'm an old guy, and so I'm more in the front of the line here in the States for vaccinations.
Yeah.
But really starting to have a healthy, good rollout now. And I think by summer, both in the United States and abroad, we should be in better shape. And maybe we can all start going out in the world, still being careful in crowds and social distancing. But I think that we will perhaps be much closer to herd immunity by then.
We hope that everything will be as normal as possible soon. I want to talk about you about your acting career. You began your acting career in studying and playing classical character on stage at I think at the Meadowbrook Theater in Michigan.
Yes.
Do you miss that energy playing live on stage?
Well, I actually began in Hollywood. I co-managed my own theater on team.
Okay.
Group of students, drama students from UCLA and Cal State Northridge University. And we did some great stuff. We did the West Coast premiere of the anti-war play, Viet Rock, the Arthur Miller play about Marilyn Monroe after the fall. We had some success. And then later I was training at the American branch of the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art. And I went to work in that company, the Meadowbrook Theater, and down south of there, Great Lakes Shakespeare Festival and other theaters. The thing that's so great about theater, about performing live and working on the stage is you have more rehearsal than you do in film. And you have the run. Sometimes a run is a month. Sometimes it's 6 weeks. I've been in runs that went as long as 3-4 months. And in that time, sometimes you actually, according to your own definition of your performance or your own goals, you can get it perfect. Maybe one night, one matinee every couple of weeks or so. And that's a great feeling, that it went the way you wanted it to go. That never happens really on film.
No, you don't have the feedback from the from the public.
You have the feedback, but also it can be deceiving, because sometimes on the stage you will feel that you were really dramatically involved with your character and really into it, and you were really proud of your performance, and people will come backstage afterwards to visit you in your dressing room, and you can tell that they weren't that crazy about your performance, or they didn't like the play that much. Other times you can be sloppy and maybe forget a line or two, or a couple of jokes don't work, or a prop isn't there that you depend upon, and you think it was a sloppy show, and you didn't feel good, or you didn't feel connected to yourself or your other actors, or perhaps the audience. And then people will knock on the door of your dressing room after the show, and they'll tell you it's the greatest thing they ever saw. But what's great about that lesson is you know that you can't really tell. You'll never really know. It's an intangible thing that happens between the actor and the performance and the audience out there sitting in the dark.
Yes.
In film, you can make a mistake. You can spill a drink, a cocktail, or your cigarette can go out in the middle of a scene. And that's what you think about. You think, oh, damn, my cigarette's out, or, oh, I've spilled on myself. Or you pick the glass up and you pad yourself, and you're distracted. And then 6 months later, the directors kept that in the movie because it's so real and honest, and you see it, and it's not really acting. It's just something that happened, but it's wonderful. There's something magical about it and spontaneous. And you learn, once you've had that experience happen to you, either in the theater or on film, you learn that that's sort of the magic of the happy accident.
Yes, yes. And there's a lot in some movie. There are some directors that let you free improv, be yourself. But there's other directors that are very strict. You stick to the line, and you don't improv, and you have to be in the character always.
I'm English trained, the Royal Academy, and they're different than America. The English, they respect the playwright. The writer is at the top,
yep,
and then the director, and then the actor. In America, some of us, or some actors, believe the actor sort of has the last word and maybe a corner on the truth. But improvisation, I was afraid to do it. And yet in the 70s, I hung out at the Comedy Store with my girlfriend and her comic troupe, which had, among other people, in it, Michael Keaton.
Oh.
And I also was hanging out with Robin Williams.
Wow.
Sandra Bernhard and people like that back then. And I watched them improvise, and I was just so impressed and astounded by the way they worked. And I knew a little bit about this because I had worked with a man who'd been in Second City in Chicago earlier when I was at university. But I was told that you trust the writer first, and you respect the writing, and you find it in the writing. And it took me years to get my confidence up enough to improvise a little bit. And I never did it within the internal scene, but I would do it at the beginning of scenes or at the end of scenes.
Okay.
The heads or tails of a scene.
Yep.
And that's sort of how I found my freedom to do that, and discovered things that my character would say.
Okay. That's very interesting. And speaking of the 70s, I just saw somewhere that you were considered for a part in Star Wars in 1977. Is that true? Can you tell us what happened?
This is an internet faux pas.
Okay.
An internet where it's like that old game you play with the paper cups and the string or you whisper, that game where you sit in a circle and they whisper in an ear and you see how it comes out at the other end. It's changed. No, I told a story years ago to journalists. It was my Once Upon a Time in Hollywood story. And the point of the story is, back in the 70s, one of my buddies was Mark Hamill.
Oh.
And I had gone up, I had been begging my agent. I was a movie actor and Mark was a television star. And it was a bit separate back then in the 70s. And I had been begging my agent for an interview, an audition for Apocalypse Now.
Oh.
Ford Coppola's Vietnam movie.
Yep.
And I wanted to read for the part of Cookie, the Frederick Porras role, the saucier from Louisiana.
Yes.
He played. And Freddie Forrest was under contract to Zoetrope, Francis Ford Coppola's company. And Freddie was marvelous. They told me almost immediately when I got in the office that I was too young for that role. But they had allowed me to come audition for the surfer who's on the boat that goes up the river to seek out Marlon Brando. And so I read for the surfer. And while I was there, one of the producers said, you might be right for something across the hall. And he walked me over to where they were casting this space movie. My excitement was that it was George Lucas, who I idolized, because American Graffiti is a perfect film.
Yep.
And I love that film. And so I was just excited to be in the office. I knew almost instantly that they thought I was wrong. But they took my photograph. They took Polaroid photos of me, more like mug shots.
So you didn't read any text or any part?
There was a script of sides, just scenes, sitting on a table in the office. And I can't remember whether I read it or whether I stole it. But I do remember seeing a description of the character Luke Skywalker.
Wow.
And because I remember that name. It's such a great name, Skywalker. And I went across the street to a famous old Chinese restaurant, had a cocktail, and had some spring rolls, I think, sobered up, got in my old beat up sports car, drove up into the Hollywood Hills where I lived to my apartment. And as I walked to my apartment door, I saw my buddy Mark Hamill's cowboy boots. He used to always take them off and leave them on my porch. And I walked in and Mark was lying on my couch and he was halfway through a 6-pack of Heineken beer and he was watching the old Bob Newhart television show. And I told him about this guy. He loved George Lucas too. And I said, Mark, they're doing this space movie, this sci-fi movie. George Lucas is doing a sci-fi movie. And we both knew about THX 138. And I said, this part sounds right for you. Now, Mark's agent is very upset with me for telling this story. She may, in fact, have already had him an audition. I don't know. But I know that Mark didn't know about Star Wars. He didn't know about the project at that moment. And he got on the phone and he called his agent. So I sort of think I'm the guy that told him about the part. That's the connection there. And it has since turned out to me being up for Star Wars. And I was not up for Star Wars, no.
Okay, but you are responsible to have Mark Hamill playing Luke Skywalker.
I put a bee in his bonnet, as we say. And he did get on the phone and call his agent right after that. Actors, we all have parts we didn't get that we always remember. Even though it might be 30 or 40 years later, or parts we turned down. I was considered for a couple of callbacks for the TV series Kojak.
Oh, okay.
For a character on that would have changed my life. They changed the role, but for a moment of time, I went back 4 or 5 times for that. And I went back 4, 5, 6 times for Dukes of Hazzard.
Okay.
One of the brothers on Dukes of Hazzard. That would have changed my life. My whole life would have gone another way.
Yeah.
And a great movie called The Last Detail with Jack Nicholson, a part that Randy Quaid played. He was wonderful in it. But I had loved that book, and I gave a great audition for that, and I thought I was more right because Randy was so tall and big, although he did a brilliant performance. But I mean, I remember back then I thought, oh, how did Randy get the part? He's so tall, you know, and the guy's supposed to be kind of the weakling, the Navy police, the MPs, the military police, they're worried about him having to go in the brig, you know, and when you look at Randy in real life, you would never worry about him. He's a big guy. And I'm just, you know, I'm 5'10", I'm not. And I had a baby face back then. So those are the roles in the 70s that slipped through my fingers, that haunted me a bit. And there were others too, others as well. But those were the roles because those all became huge hits and Oscar-nominated projects. And so you when you're back then, you know, I would have nightmares about losing those parts, you know.
I agree.
I was never up for Star Wars. I just told Mark about the project.
Okay, but speaking of the television show that like Duke of Hazzard and Kojak, there was a television show that made you a star. You know, your first appearance as Willie in V was in 1983, and people just fell in love with the character. Did you expect the success of this character?
You know, I was just so busy working on that show. It began as a mini series, and the days were long, and it was 5 or 6 days a week, depending upon whether we were out on location or not, and they could work us an extra day. And I didn't know what to think of the miniseries. I knew that we had brought John Dykstra from Star Wars over to do our effects, so we raised the bar for special effects on television. Before us, it was just somebody running around in green makeup chasing William Shatner.
Yep.
You know? And, so I do remember that and thinking that it was going to be a big event because they had put billboards up, signs all over America before we premiered. And it was just the graffiti of a V in red paint on a black background, dripping the red paint from the graffiti V like blood. And the only other campaign I'd ever seen this stunning for advertising a project that was coming out in the future was Rosemary's Baby, the Polanski film. Yeah. All over America, they put stencils on sidewalks that said, "Pray for Rosemary's Baby." And so I kind of thought that we were going to attract an audience. But the great gift for me of V was that it's the first time people put my name to my face.
Yes.
People recognized me for 10 years before V. People bought me drinks in bars. I got fan mail. People came up to me in the street, but nobody knew my name. And it was also an international success, V. It was an international hit overnight as well. So overnight, people knew my name, Robert Englund, and they put it to my face. And I was an international, I had international recognition.
That was the first time you were recognized, but around the same year, you went auditioning for this little horror movie called The Nightmare on Elm Street. First of all, David Warner who played in Straw Dogs and Tron, was considered to play Freddy Krueger, but Wes Craven wanted a bigger man, and he went in talk with Kane Hodder to do it. And in the end, how did you went through this auditioning process?
Well, it's interesting. You know, when I was in college at university, David Warner, for a while, was my favorite actor in the world. He'd starred in a movie called Morgan with Vanessa Redgrave that I loved. I used to take girls, date girls, and take them to see that movie. And if they didn't laugh in the right places, I wouldn't see them again. That's how much I was obsessed with that movie.
Okay.
And I had heard years later when I was at the Royal Academy, at the Academy of Dramatic Art, the American branch of the Royal Academy, in outside of Detroit. I had heard we had the faculty from London. The Royal Academy faculty had come to work at this school. I heard from that faculty. We used to get together in the evenings and drink, have cocktails, and we'd be rehearsing, working on plays at the Meadowbrook. And I heard stories about David Warner's Hamlet. And some people to this day think his Hamlet was the best Hamlet of the 20th century.
Wow.
And I've seen great photographs of it. He wore a really long scarf like Doctor Who, which I thought was so cool. You know, as a young actor. Anyway, I didn't know any of this. I heard later that they were looking for a stuntman because of the fire sequences, and they were worried about the makeup.
Yeah.
I believe that Annette Benson, the famous casting director, had a lot to do with getting me in there to meet Wes. I wasn't seeking this part. I only went up for it because it fit in my schedule. I was on a hiatus from V.
Okay.
This project fit in my schedule. I owed my responsibilities. I was under contract to Warner Brothers and to for V. And but this little project, this little film fit in there. And I was very curious about Wes Craven because I had been hanging out at a new wave bar in Hollywood, and they had a monitor on either side of the bar hanging from the ceiling. And on one of them was scenes from David Lynch films on a continuous loop, mostly Eraserhead. Okay. And on the other one were scenes from The Hills Have Eyes, wow, and Last House on the Left.
Whoa.
So in my imagination, after a Bushmills and a beer and listening to new wave music thumping in the background, I kind of had Wes and David Lynch combined. You know, I thought of Wes as this sort of dark, talented director. So I was curious about him and did want to work with him because I had seen those scenes and those films over and over again at my favorite hangout, at my favorite little new wave dive bar. So when Wes's name showed up on the project, that's what interested me. Then I read the script, and the script was great. Wes is a terrific writer, and it really kind of spoke to me. And then when Wes auditioned me, he sort of explained it again. And he is so eloquent and poetic, and I really kind of got it. And I think he understood that I got it. On the other hand, he may have just cast me because I have a thin face and broad shoulders, and he was worried about how the makeup would look because they were all nervous about the special effects makeup. On the other hand, Annette Benson may have been whispering in his ear, I'm a big fan of Robert's, because she had tested me for just about every role on a movie called The National Lampoon's Class Reunion.
Okay.
And I canceled myself out on those auditions. I didn't get in that movie. And literally famous actresses were asking me to audition with them for that film, but I kind of canceled myself out. It was a very good lesson. I learned never to do that again. It may be Annette Benson that got me the part. Wes was very kind in the subsequent years and said that, you know, I was intelligent and I understood the project, and that's why he cast me. But it could have been as simple as me having a thin face, and they knew that when they put all those prosthetics on me, it would even out with my shoulders. You know, I wouldn't look, you know, sometimes they put special effects makeup on people and their heads look too big.
Yeah.
You know, the ratio goes wrong. And with me, that didn't happen because even though I'm 5'10", I have the shoulders of a 6-foot man. And I have a thin face. So you could put a layer of prosthetics on me and it wouldn't make my head look too big.
Yes, that's one of the quality of the Freddy's makeup. It fits with your face, with your you can act with this, you know.
Well, part of it was David, a lot of credit goes to David Miller for conceiving it. And he used these dreadful books with pictures of burn victims. I couldn't even look at these books. He wanted to share them with me, made me sick. But he also imagined Freddy older. He imagined me older. And that may have happened when he put that skull cap on me for the early makeup tests when they were making the foam latex prosthetic pieces. He may have gotten the idea then, and that inspired his sculpting of Freddy a little bit older. I mean, he put my eyelids a little droopier than they would have been. He gave these folds that are on an older man now, but he made them deeper than they normally would have been. So he may have decided to do that, and that, for some reason, I could relate to that. When I saw the makeup during the makeup tests, I could see, and I relished the opportunity of being able to take my hat off and show this phenomenally scarred, suppurating wounds on my head, that Freddy had. I wanted to save that. I remember being in the office with Bob Shea, the head of New Line, and Wes, and they were checking the makeup out, and they were doing last minute wardrobe tweaks, and they lost their faith in the fedora, the signature hat.
Really?
That's in the script. Yeah, they wanted to change that. I don't know why. I think they just had to have something to do. But the two of them were sitting on the floor on a futon. It's the 80s. Everybody had futons. So I was towering over them. I was dressed as Freddy, but I wasn't in the Freddy makeup. I was there for wardrobe. And they kept trying these different hats on me, and they were ridiculous hats. I mean, not as ridiculous as a cowboy hat, but everything else. Baseball hats and paperboy hats from the 1930s. I remember I put the paperboy hat on, and I go, if you guys make me wear this crap, I mean, and I went, read all about it. Here's today's paper. Freddy Krueger gets life. I mean, I hated that stuff. And then I told them, I picked up a fedora and I put it on, and I told them how it's like the shadow. And I could hide an eye behind one of the rims of the hat, beneath the lip of the brim of the hat. And I said, and there'll be at some point I can be able to take the hat off and show the disfigurement of Freddy's baldness. And then I also remember taking the lampshade off and moving it over and putting the hat on and showing my shadow against the wall.
Yeah.
Of the dressing room, so they could see how great the hat looks in silhouette.
Yeah.
And I won that fight. And it was always Wes's idea originally in the script. But, either Bob or Wes, they had both lost faith in it that afternoon. And I had to fight for Wes's own vision. I had already, in my mind's eye, and after 10 makeup tests, I had already injected that hat into my own imagination. And I knew it would be almost impossible for me to get that image of myself and the power it gave me out of my head and put on a goddamn paperboy hat.
Thank you for fighting for the fedora.
Read all about it. Springwood Massacre.
You fight for the fedora and hope you won. Good thing.
But it was Wes's vision.
Yeah,
he had just sort of lost trust in it, and I kind of had to remind him. But I think it was when I showed the silhouette, the shadow of Freddy with a hat on.
Was striking.
Yeah, that's what got him.
Besides the claw and the hat, there is this iconic makeup you wear for the character. You've worked with many talented makeup artists who did their own rendition of the Freddy's character. First of all, it was David Miller, as you said, and then Kevin Yager for the parts 2, 3, and 4, and then KNB FX took over for part 5 and New Nightmare, and then John Carl Buechler did the part 6. Over all those designs, which one is your favorite?
Well, I love the Kevin Yeager makeup on part 4, or K and B makeup combo. Kevin did the big change in part 2. Made
the witch one.
Witchy, yeah.
Witchy.
But also, I love the Bill Terazakis demon makeup for Freddy versus Jason when I come out of the water.
Yeah.
Jason's Lake, Crystal Lake. I love that makeup. And in Wes Craven's New Nightmare, there's a kind of Uber Freddy.
Yes.
One that comes out, rises out of the bed and says, "Miss me." And, I love that. I love that makeup too. It's an exaggeration. It's sort of like an essential super Freddy.
Yeah, with the bone claw, it was pretty badass.
You know, here's a little parenthetical for you. There's an Italian movie poster from Nightmare 1, 1984, and it's the bone claw in 1984.
Whoa.
So either that illustrator, that artist, foresaw the bone claw, or when they created the bone claw for Wes Craven's New Nightmare, he had seen that Italian poster, that effects guy. I don't know which is which, but it's very interesting.
Really, and then in the first nightmare, came, and was there some parts or scenes that didn't made it to the screen?
Well, I tell a story, and this is just a little bit, but in my famous, and maybe the most famous sequence in Nightmare on Elm Street, the original part 1, is Tina being dragged across the ceiling while her boyfriend watches her being murdered by Freddy. And when we shot that, we also shot it with me dragging her.
Oh.
So you would see what she sees. So there would be an intercut there, and you would see Amanda Wyss, the actress, on the ceiling, which was really not the ceiling. It's like the Fred Astaire house. It's really an upside down room. The cameraman's upside down. Anyway, so you'd see Amanda on the ceiling getting dragged, and a streak of blood, and then you would see from Amanda's point of view, Freddy dragging her, holding onto her legs, and then above me, on what would be my ceiling, you would see her boyfriend and the bedroom all upside down looking at her.
Whoa.
But we shot a little bit of that.
Okay.
And there was some cool stuff there. We did a shot with the wife, Annie, of Jacques Heitken. She was one of the operators and first assistant camera woman with Jacques Heitken.
The director of photography?
And be director of photography. And because Amanda's not allowed to operate a camera, she's not in the union, they and she doesn't know how, it's very complicated, they gave a handheld camera to Jacques' wife, Annie, and she took her jeans off, and they put stage blood that they had on Amanda, on her legs. And then I would pull her legs, and she would shoot me between her legs.
Point of view.
She would be holding the camera.
Wow.
Amanda's not there. It's just her legs in the shot.
Yeah.
And shooting like that. And it's Amanda's point of view, looking between the legs at me dragging her on the ceiling, which is what's really happening in the nightmare. And at the end of one of the takes, I dropped her legs, and no one said cut. And I looked, and I had the stage blood all over the blades of my claw, the right hand. Sorry, using the wrong hand. And I went like that. I'm just looking at it, and it was like a cobweb of blood between the blades, because it's that viscous stage blood. It's kind of thick. It's got gelatin in it or something. I don't know. Anyway, I just sort of gave her a kiss of death, and I went with my claw, and there literally was a little blood bubble.
Oh my God.
Well, obviously they never used that in the movie, but I heard later on that Wes would show that to censors. And that he never was intended to use it. But by showing that incredibly dark image to censors, he says, well, okay, I'll cut that. But and then he would get one of the violent sequences or one of the gory sequences he really wanted. So he kind of used that like a trade.
Okay, it was his Joker card.
Yes, exactly. Well, I think he did that more than once. He used a couple of other things too, but I'm not sure what they were, and they may have been things he wanted in the movie.
Absolutely amazing. And speaking of violence and the censors, and do you remember how audiences reacted to the movie on its release?
I have two experiences. One was I went down to the University of Southern California and snuck in a screening down there. And I can't remember who I was with. It might have been my downstairs neighbor. But it was a matinee, and the movie had just come out. And there were these beautiful Black girls, like sorority girls, in the audience. And they had already seen it. And they were with their boyfriends who were football players. And they had brought their boyfriends to see the movie. And here these guys are big guys. It's the USC football team, right? These guys are tackles and guards and halfbacks, big guys. And the girls knew where the scary stuff was. They'd seen it already. And so they would be watching their boyfriends jump and react at all the scares in the movie. And then they would just go into hysterics. It was so funny to them to watch these big guys jump and cover their eyes. And I remember sitting in the back and seeing that. And it struck me that it was scaring guys, A, and B, that there were already people seeing it twice. And this was maybe a week after it opened.
Amazing. So you noticed that the movie is working on.
And then I went for an award for V in Italy, and I flew over to Italy with Diana, the actress that played Diana in V, and the actress that played Lydia, the three of us, and we went over on Alitalia, and I had my rented tuxedo, and I'm with these two beautiful, beautiful women, in Italy, in Milan. And we pulled up, it was the TV awards, like the TV Guide Awards for France, Spain, and Italy, it's a magazine. And we pulled up and in the limousine, and they opened the doors, and the audience dragged me out. And I was in this rented tuxedo, and they separated me from my girlfriend, and they kind of pushed me over the crowd in the piazza in front of La Scala, in Opera House in Milano, in Rome, and I'm like this, and then and then when somebody got me and walked me in, and I found my girlfriend, they escorted my girlfriend in. But when that happened, and I was there to win, up for an award for V. When that was happening, they were chanting, "Freddy, Freddy, Freddy." So that was an inclination to me that we were, a huge hit. Literally hundreds of fans, like a mosh pit for a
rock show.
Yeah. Yeah.
You are a rock star. But I heard a lot of times that Freddy is a rock star, so it was the beginning of this, rock star, iconic character,
Well, Freddy is the symbol, the logo of the franchise. And so he stands for all of the fun and all of the times you've been scared over the history of 8 movies, whether you saw it in theaters, whether you passed around an old crappy videotape in dorm rooms in college, snowed in the winter, whether you watched it with your mom and dad after going to the mom and pop video store before there were the big chains like Blockbuster, and the kids got to choose a movie, and mom and dad got to choose a movie, and the kids would bring home Nightmare on Elm Street 2 and scare their parents, or Dream Warriors, scare their parents. next morning, Dad might scratch the screen to scare the kids, or you'd watch it at home on the weekends if you were from a divorced family with a cool stepfather, or with a Sunday father, a Sunday dad who let you watch the horror movies because mommy didn't let you watch them. But people have these memories over 20 years, 1984 to 1994, and then again 2004.
Mm-hmm.
So with Freddy versus Jason. So it's 20 years, and the technology is constantly getting more sophisticated. It goes from theatrical release to cable, to videotape, to box sets videotape, to now we're into 3 videotapes, tri-set, DVDs, Blu-ray, Halloween marathons, DVDs, the making of, extras, all of that stuff, that comes with it. Then people all saw it. And I've recognized that in the last 10 years or so, how many people saw these films, which were, at least at the beginning, controversial and dark. And how many people actually saw these movies that were part of the video and DVD generation that watched them at home with their mother, their father, an older sister, an older brother, or tormented a younger brother and younger sister, challenged them, made them watch it. And it's now, for these people, it's this wonderful memory of being in a living room or a den at home with mom and dad, the lights turned off, that old quilt on the back of the couch wrapped around you, a fire in the fireplace, the glow of the video hearth, and the whole family being scared together and laughing together. And they have that memory. And back in the 80s, some of those people have gone now. They're not with us any longer. So some of those memories are very cherished memories that my fans have, or the original fans have, of sharing that experience with loved ones who are no longer with us.
I agree that you are part of our memories and the good moments of scare, Did you did share the screen with a young talent named Johnny Depp? Did you run on each other since the wrapping of part 1?
Well, I ran into Johnny. Well, he worked on part 6. He did a cameo.
Yep. And
we hung out a little bit then. The Rachel Talalay, Nightmare on Elm Street 6, Freddy's Dead. And then I had a commercial audition in the heart of Hollywood, La Cienega Boulevard. And I used to go to this place all the time. They had a lot of auditions there. I forget what it was, but I kind of got stuck in Hollywood. It was rush hour. And I knew I'm never, I'll just be sitting in traffic for the next 2 hours. So I walked across the street there's an old theater that I had worked at years and years ago. And there was a pub, a kind of a pub that when the theater was running at night would be like where you'd go have a drink at intermission. It was called the Coronet Pub. And I went in and I had my obligatory Irish whiskey, Bushmills on the rocks. And I was alone and there was hardly anybody in there. And I looked over and I thought I saw Johnny Depp. And this is right, I think, right when he just opened his nightclub on Sunset Boulevard.
The Viper Room.
And the Viper Room. And he and his friend came over. I think he was with a musician. And they sat with me at the bar and we talked. Now, I had just returned from doing a movie in Europe. And I remember seeing Johnny had some movie in Europe that was a hit, and it wasn't a hit in the United States, but it was a hit over there. And his picture was on buses and on billboards, and you could just tell it was a big hit. Europe had discovered Johnny Depp, and I can't remember what the film was now, but Gilbert Grape was a hit here, so it wasn't Gilbert Grape, but it was something else, probably after that. And I remember telling Johnny that. I remember, saying, you should go enjoy this movie's being celebrated in Europe. You could afford a plane ticket. Now, this is way before I think this is before Edward Scissorhands, and I think it's, obviously before Pirates of the Caribbean. But still, Johnny was, he hadn't done Donnie Brasco yet, but we all knew Johnny, who he was, and he was successful. And I think he might have taken my advice and gone over to Europe shortly after, because I know he did go there and do some movies over there, and I think it was good for him. I think he fell in love, and I think he had a kid. And he was there for a while, but they sort of, Europe I think they saw all of Johnny's gifts earlier than America did. I think America just thought he was handsome. Know? And also in America, for many people on the street, he was still 21 Jump Street.
Yes.
I don't think he enjoyed that,
A talented actor.
Really talented actor, yeah. And people forget. And when you watch, Scissorhands or you watch, he's done some splendid work.
Mm-hmm. In the Nightmare films, you had a lot of fabulous moments. What is your favorite scenes from all the series? Do you have some moments that you never forget, or
I think we talked about one, and that would be the rising out of the bed. That in Wes Craven's New Nightmare. That's a hell of an entrance.
Yes.
I really like that. I like my performance in Rennie Harlin's Nightmare on Elm Street Part 4.
Yeah.
I like the performance there. Rennie left me alone. And he let me physicalize it a little bit more, dance it a little more. Freddy exists in the subconscious, the imagination of his potential victims. The curse is that you hear about Freddy, and perhaps somebody you're related to had something to do with Freddy being burned alive, and you're cursed, and you hear about Freddy. And then once you've heard about Freddy, he can get in your subconscious and into your dream state, into the landscape of your mind, into your nightmares. And it's an exaggerated thought. It's a surrealistic thought, imagination of Freddy. And so I played him a little bit larger than life, because he's in that world of surrealism and the imagination, that landscape, that dream landscape. In a perfect world, one argument could be made that if you had a huge budget, that, let's say, Freddy killed 3 different people in the movie, 3 different kids, that each one of them, they know that Freddy wears a red and green sweater. They know he has this funny glove claw hand or knife fingers, and they know he's been burned and he wears a hat. They don't know what kind of hat. They don't know what kind of sweater. They don't really know what the glove looks like or how badly burned he is. So you could cast 3 different actors for each one of those victims. One Freddy could be 6'2", 6'4", and he could be wearing a cardigan instead of a crew neck sweater. He could be wearing an old baseball hat. Maybe just half of his face is destroyed by the burns. Maybe the claw has elongated knives, even longer, like Wolverine. Or maybe little tiny razors at the tip of each finger. So for every victim, Freddy could be different. He could be stout. He could be short. He could be very skinny. He could be almost emaciated. He could be, the sweater could be different. He'd be wearing a rolled neck turtleneck to cover his disfigured neck. We don't know. It could be a hooded sweater of red and green so that he looks like death a little bit. The hat, again, it could be a baseball hat. It could be a fedora. We don't know. And the claw could be different. And half of his face could be destroyed and half of it could be normal, so that the camera could sometimes just see the normal side and then have the other side revealed.
Yeah.
For the sake of a good scare. There's so many ways you could go, because he only exists in the imagination of that person dreaming him.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like, I mean, and then at the end of the film, or at the beginning of the film, you could see in some incarnation me, the actual Freddy. You'd see the real Freddy, but people would be dreaming different versions
Yeah.
of the real Freddy. Maybe we'd see me burned alive and what I look like when I come back, but he doesn't necessarily manifest the same in everybody's subconscious. But I always knew, no matter what, Freddy was being imagined. He was being dreamt by someone.
Yeah. That's pretty amazing, because the character seems to be larger than life. But we all know that you said you won't be Freddy Krueger anymore. You won't be doing any nightmare. And you recently said that if there was another actor playing Freddy Krueger, your pick will be Kevin Bacon. Why will he be a good choice for the role?
Well, I'll tell you why, but it's not my idea. I was at a con, like we're talking now.
Okay.
I was doing my Q&A, and somebody, had heard online that Kevin Bacon was being considered for a new Nightmare on Elm Street script. This was presented to me in a question answer format at a con in England, or maybe it was Atlanta. I can't remember. But when I heard that, I instantly thought, Kevin's a good choice. And the reason I think Kevin Bacon is a good choice, and he's so busy now with his new show, City on the Hill. He's, and he probably doesn't want me, talking about this anymore. But Kevin is also a very gifted physical actor. And he's not afraid to act. And I like actors that act.
Yes.
And Kevin also seems to love horror. He's in one of the original Friday the 13th films,
Mm-hmm.
and he's in he's in Tremors, obviously. But he's in one of mine. I think I love one called Stir of Echoes that I really think is a terrific film.
Yes.
And so I know he has a respect for the genre. He's also the right size and weight. And I don't think he'd be afraid to act it, as opposed to making it just a psychological performance.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I think, he's a good choice. I think he's far too busy now. He's a remarkable actor.
Yeah.
And I think he has this great project now, City on a Hill.
Yeah.
Which it looks like he loves doing. He's terrific in it. So that, and I think they just started a new season, and they're probably behind the 8 ball of COVID, trying to catch up. But he's just such an interesting actor, and I think he respects the genre. And I just think he's just physically right for it.
Mm-hmm. It would be
I don't think he's ugly or anything like that. I just think that, no, I mean, the way he carries himself and the way he moves.
Yes. Time flies. We had to talk a lot of subjects, but I especially want you to talk about Stranger Things. You had joined the cast. Can you just give us a little glimpse of?
Without it being a spoiler alert.
Yep.
It's very difficult for me. I have to be very careful.
Yeah. I understand.
And especially with the Stranger Things fans. I'm going to be on it. I play a character named Victor Creel. I think I can suggest that you will see me both young and old. I think I can say that. And I do share a scene with a wonderful actress that I've discovered the last couple of years, Maya Hawke, who is the daughter of Ethan Hawke and Uma Thurman.
Oh.
And she's just remarkable. She's a regular on the show.
Yes.
But I've also seen her in several wonderful films. She's my favorite new addition to the show, as well as I've seen her in other things, the great Lord Bird with her father and other things. She's just really special. And she's one of the actors in my scenes. And I'm really anxious to work with her and tell her how much I'm a fan of her father's as well.
Hmm. That's amazing. Do we have some little time to talk about True Terrors? You are hosting a show as a Robert Englund. Can you just talk about True Terrors?
This is a very close to my heart, this show.
Yep.
And we are a casualty of COVID. We premiered almost simultaneous with the plague in America. And there was very little publicity. And I had a huge, huge publicity tour of the US and Canada canceled.
Oh.
Doing all the big talk shows. And so we've been a casualty of COVID. I'm happy with the show. I think we did a really good job. And I think had we done a second season, we'd learned so much doing the first half a dozen that I know we would have gone on to become a classic, entertaining, dark show, a kind of comfort food.
Yeah. Telling scary stories.
A kind of dark comfort food reality show that I think fans would have liked. I'm still in contact with one of the producers of that show, and we're cooking up. It's on the extreme back burner, but we may be cooking up another show that I would host in Chicago about the famous serial killer.
Okay.
At the World's Fair.
Wow.
It's a great idea. I'm hoping, that, now that COVID's kind of dwindling down, that we can take some meetings and maybe do some pitches for that. But True Terror, was it was hard. It was low budget. It was new for me. I had to sort of become a combination of absolutely myself and then a little bit of what fans expect of me, with just a little bit of Vincent Price maybe mixed into my personality.
Nice.
And a little bit of Klaus Kinski maybe, as if Robert Englund enjoys horror a little more than I already do. I relish it a little more than I always do. And now I'm going to share a horror story with you. So it was a little bit of that element of, I've got something to share with you. Here we go.
That's
and then
amazing.
Get into this strange kind of docudrama.
Yeah.
But it was fun because I got to be on camera, and I also had to work with the discipline of narration to image. Mm-hmm. And I've done that before, but that's always tricky. And it's fun because you can, when you're not on camera, you can get it just the way you want it, which is gratifying as an actor. And we did some interesting stuff. I'd had a show years ago called the Horror Hall of Fame. And
yes.
I was able to narrate documentaries about Karloff, Bela Lugosi, Alfred Hitchcock.
Was awesome.
And we had the access to the archives at Universal Studios, and we had amazing stuff that we were able to put in the documentary. And that was fun too. So yeah. I'd sort of done it before, but it was really, my voice is a little more whiskey voice now and wiser. And I've done more voiceover work, and so I could really play with it, and it was fun to do.
Amazing. Thank you so much. That's all the time we had. It was just such a great pleasure to have you with us. And the last word, could it be Freddy Krueger saying something to us?
Don't take a nap, or it'll be a nightmare at Shawicon.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Englund.
Thank you.
Take care. Thank you very much.
Everybody.